Hello, folks. I start out laughing just because what could have gone wrong has in terms of putting these videos out, but we're gonna go on anyhow. And I'm so sorry that it's been such a long time since I put another review out. But yeah, a whole lot of crap happened this past week. So we'll start with Raw, and I will do my best to have this out before the next one actually goes on air tonight. So it starts out with Scott Stanford and Matt Kemp. They welcome us to Raw Talk on May 16th. The one and only Booker T is announced to appear later on. And they start out with a couple of headlines. You know, Asuka is the #1 contender for the Raw Women's Championship, and Bobby Lashley puts boots on the ground and wins his cage match with Omos. So, Theory brings out Veer Mahaan to face Mustafa Ali. Mahaan crushes Ali with more than a little help from our crooked guest referee, The Miz. Mysterios reappear, eventually putting Mahaan down, and I don't understand why Mustafa Ali specifically needed to be the one to face Veer. I want them both to do well now, but not at each other's expense. You know, brands are switching all over the place. I don't understand why they couldn't have Drew Gulak maybe do the job for him, maybe let him get pounded by Veer a little bit. But at least this was a real opponent for Mahaan. And, you know, Ali was actually game. He got some offense in. And the bogus calls and the slow counts and all that kind of junk kind of ensured that Mahaan didn't get a clean win, which would have made Ali look even worse. But since Vinnie Mac's protege engineered this whole catastrophe, Sarah Schreiber approaches him. She approaches Theory for a word backstage. She introduces him as the youngest U.S. champion and asks why he made the decision not to face Mustafa Ali himself. Austin Theory repeats this question, and says Ali needs to prove that he's actually championship material, but he obviously isn't because he lost to Veer Mahaan. Theory, on the other hand, stepped up and became the U.S. champion and took a great selfie. And he scoffs at Ali, thinking that he could actually beat the future. And okay, it was a nice selfie, but not worth it though. Sarah questions all these underhanded tactics, and he asks if she knows who he is. He's the protege for Vince McMahon, who the chairman puts everything on, and he is going to be known as the U.S. champion. I don't know what that means. Sarah better watch what she says to him next time. Now, I don't know if this was a career threat or a thinly veiled physical threat, but either way, it was kind of cringy. Like, ugh, what do you mean? Or what? What are you gonna do? But I am so tired of this character. I don't know what to do with myself. Like, the Theory character has zero substance. Why does he get to make matches? Like, what intention does it have? Like, what has he been doing with Mr. McMahon that we've been able to see that would convince anybody that McMahon would put that kind of trust in him? Like, when's he gonna start defending the U.S. championship? Like, or is it more like Ricochet, where the belt's just a pretty accessory now and you don't really do much with it? They love to change people from NXT to the main roster, but they should have gone a little bit further this time than Theory just losing his first name. And I apologize for the road noise. He's got all the heel delivery, he really does, but just the material makes it a little bit hollow. But next they bring in ostentatious fashion, the WWE Hall of Famer, Booker T. and he's as regal as ever. Scott Stanford inquires about the Mr. McMahon element to Austin Theory. And Booker says that Theory's kind of maturing. He mentions the fact that he's the youngest and that he's learning these dirty tricks from the boss. And Booker T expresses his pride as he himself was the one to bring the U.S. Championship over. So Matt Camp wants to see Ali and Theory in a match, but admires Theory's strategy of kind of picking his spots as to when he actually wants to get it done. So they move on to Cody Rhodes versus Seth Rollins 3 Hell in a Cell. But to Booker T, Seth Rollins needs the win more than Cody does at this point. He is down 2 matches. And he compares kind of the career ascension of each competitor. You know, he contends that Rollins is the one who made it to the top fairly easy, while Cody had to break himself down and build himself back up. I assume he's referring to Stardust in that instance. But Cam asks about how different Cody is now from the Cody Rhodes that Booker T faced earlier. And he thinks that he's just more comfortable. He's not really doing things just to do them anymore, Booker thinks. And that Seth Rollins would have his head on a swivel because Cody Rhodes is fighting for destiny, something you do not want to come against. So after a quick break, the show kind of snaps back to footage of the cage match, specifically Cedric Alexander's influence and Omos like throwing Lashley into the throes of metallic victory. I don't know. But I don't really understand the purpose of Cedric Alexander from a story perspective, because it's not as if the Hurt Business is getting back together. So other than taking bumps, I really don't get why he's there. But anyway, Matt and Scott Stanford are excited for the Almighty Challenge for MVP and Omos. They recall all of the times that Omos and Lashley have faced off in the past few weeks, which kind of made me less excited about it, because I'm like, all right, obviously they faced each other a bunch already. I don't need to see it again. But they move on to Becky versus Asuka, and after Becky attempts to cheat with Asuka's Wagasa, Asuka actually sprays some green mist into the eyes of Big Time Bex to get that win. Now, Kevin Patrick gets some thoughts from the EST on her new #1 contender. Now, Belair is excited about the upcoming match. She says she can't call herself the best without stepping into the ring with the best, and she's ready for Asuka. No one asked about the green mist and her not so subtle reaction to it. Bianca says Becky was way too focused on her and not enough on Asuka, and she got what she deserved. Now to Big Time Bex, Belair says, "Toughen up, kid. You got it. I believe in you." So upbeat, but so condescending. I loved it. It was great. But Stanford and Camp discussed this deteriorating mental condition of Becky Lynch after this loss. They clarified that Becky didn't just hand Asuka her championship when she went on maternity leave, but Asuka actually won Money in the Bank, and it was for the championship instead of for a contract. But then they go back to Veer again, this time focusing on the Mysterios and the fact that they beat him down a little bit. And they do that kind of as a segue to an interview. So Ray says he saw the opportunity to give Veer a taste of his own medicine. And Dominic says that Mahan kind of sent him to the hospital a couple of weeks ago, but he's back now. The Mysterios are back, and they're here for vengeance. Now I'm glad that they're back. But keep Dominic's responses short. This is where he shines. The longer things get, the worse they tend to get as far as talking goes. But from there, we move to the singles match between Riddle and Jimmy Uso. Now, of course, Jay tries the two-man leverage tight pin. The ref catches him, ejects Jay, and Riddle exploits that distraction to defeat Jimmy. So Stanford asks if Booker T is still pushing for the Usos to unify the tag champs successfully. And Booker refers to Jay as a security blanket for Jimmy and questions if Jimmy's lost a step. Now, I think this reinforces the idea of Jay being the better of the two Usos. Back in the day, I actually thought Jimmy was going to be the breakout star, so it's interesting to see how this plays out over the years. But Matt Camp contrasts a tag team for life like the Usos, these twin brothers, against two great single stars that come together like Randy and Riddle. But with the final word on the match, Booker has his money on the Usos to win the tag championships, which was a solid bet. And further, he asserts that Bianca may be the greatest women's champion in the history of the game. We'll see. She's definitely the greatest, in my humble opinion, of right now. We'll see if she gets up to all-time status. This wasn't a great episode for the first time back, folks. Oh my goodness. Wow. I gave it a 2 out of 5. Optimistically. The episode was it was more of theories. I'm great just because I'm great. Fluff. The Mysterios. We're happy to be here. We're happy to be back lines. Bianca did what she could with the small amount of time that the wrestlers were given in this episode. And in that time, she did build excitement for her match with Asuka, and she put the Empress over. She's successfully outlined this match as what I think is the best kind of babyface versus babyface match. It's built on kind of mutual respect and just a sentiment of let's see who's the best. And that's the way it should be between two heroes. However, this wasn't enough to bring up the other interviews, and the complete lack of discussion regarding Sasha and Naomi and that scrapped 6-pack challenge for the #1 contendership definitely took away from the content for me. And speaking of what everyone can't stop speaking of, I have to cast my lot in about the Naomi Sasha walkout. So for me, a lot of it actually depends on the timeline of what happened, which unfortunately is something we may never know for certain. Some reports are saying that they left the show way ahead of time and WWE put that 6-pack challenge graphic up at the beginning anyway, like knowing that the match wasn't going to happen. And then some say that they left during the broadcast. Now, if that second one is true, that's not the greatest thing to do because you can make things more difficult for other people. But in either case, I definitely support Sasha and Naomi standing up for themselves. Like, for them to finally get to a prominent place again, even in the women's tag team division, it was a lovely thing to see. But even in that, it said that Sasha was promised a WrestleMania match with Charlotte for months. And so the women's tag team championships were just a kind of concession prize because Ronda took Sasha's spot when she came back. So if WWE wasn't going to have Boss and Glow defend these titles, make something out of the division until Money in the Bank, which again is the report, and they were just supposed to be jobbers for the champions. Naomi's just supposed to lose to Bianca and Sasha's just supposed to lose to Ronda, and there's nothing else really going on. I don't blame them for being like, hey, our titles matter too. We want a good division, but saying that with their feet. A long-running feud with Nikki Ash and Doudrop. Why not? That would have been great. But those are just my thoughts. What do you all think about all of this? What will the Almighty Challenge actually consist of? Will Theory ever defend the U.S. Championship? And who's going to be the women's tag team champions now? Let me know in the comments. And be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Tap that bell icon to make sure you get notifications for when new videos come out. Thank you all so much for your patience and again for watching. And I'll see you soon.